want to start with the midterms just on Tuesday. I know everybody's kind of exhausted about hearing about the midterms, but things have changed, right? We now have a Democratic House. There are more Republicans in the Senate. With the recognition that it's early, have you all thought about what the White House's tech agenda might look like next year with more Democrats in Congress?
Yeah, sure. So why don't I give an overview of the tech policy and how it's changed or not, as the case may be, as a result of Tuesday. So there's two distinct policy streams, the way that I think about it. They're related but distinct. One is the whole modernisation of government IT. So a quick overview of that. We spend around $100 billion a year inside the government on information technology, providing services both to the 2 million employees, but more importantly to the 330 million citizens that we do. And the way that I look at that is we're on the biggest IT transformation of all time. I've worked inside private sector most of my life for large companies, 100,000 people or so, but this is for millions, literally millions of people. That's a 10-year journey. That really hasn't changed as a result of Tuesday. So all of the things that we are trying to do in terms of building capability, working with the private sector and getting their input, which has been fantastic over the last 2 years, really continues on. And I see that not only for the next year, but literally this is a 5-10-year journey. So it will last past this administration and on to multiple administrations. And one of the things that we are trying to do is think about, we take the baton, we give it to the next party, they next party. Because one of the biggest issues that we've had inside the government is we haven't had administrations that have been willing to think in a multi-administration perspective. So I see that as very bipartisan. I hope that the new House will continue to fund things like the Modernising Government Technology Act, the funding there, that's incredibly high ROI projects. But otherwise, most of that is done through internal policy. So that's one distinct set. I think that continues on, and I'm incredibly delighted what we've achieved in the first couple of years. That'll continue on for the next couple and hopefully for the after. On external national policy, if I give a very broad overview of what we're trying to achieve there, and then Gail and Michael can sort of dig into any specifics. The way that I look at it is we have the most successful national IT system in the world. Clearly, we're the leaders in virtually every IT sector that we are, and that's because of the strength of the combination of the government, academia, and the private sector. We have been incredibly successful in that, and we want to continue that. Now, we need to think about how that's going to be successful with the industries of the future. So things like 5G, artificial intelligence, quantum computing. So we need to think about how that system needs to change, maybe from what it's done in the last 10 to 20 years. And I think that's a really interesting conversation about how we change the system and maybe change how we in the private sector and academia really continue to have national leadership. And the government's role in that, we spend roughly $120 billion of the $500 billion that we spend in R&D in this country. So we obviously are a big participant in direct spending. We need to make sure that we spend that money incredibly wisely, in particular in these industries of the future that are critical. We obviously need to have a regulatory environment that promotes innovation. So naturally we are a deregulatory administration. I think that's clear. But in some of the industries of the future, drone policy and things like that that Michael's worked on, we need to have a smart regulatory policy that promotes growth and innovation. And then last but not least, convening power. So the government has an incredibly important role in bringing together private sector and academia, things like setting national standards for workforce data, which we can get into but how do we bring those parties together? Clearly, we're not going to be like some governments around the world where we are going to mandate innovation. We need to let innovation flourish, but we have a role in convening and making that happen. So that's our broad agenda, and that really doesn't change as a result of Tuesday. So from my point of view, certainly in the technology space, it's very much business as normal. Everything that we've done in the last 2 years we'll continue to do.